Okay.
All right. Thank you. I am sorry to inundate your news feed with videos lately, but there's just so much going on. The legislative session is still going on until March 14th. And so there's a lot of important things to discuss. I am joined today with Wendy Hart. She just finished 2 terms on the Alpine School Board, which is our largest school district in the state. And anyway, she's a great friend of mine and always has so many insights. So the bill I want to talk today about is SB 149, which is the Teacher and Student Success Act. Mm-hmm. It is right now sweeping through the legislative session. It already passed the Senate Education Committee, the full Senate body, which means it now moves on to the House. And you need to know that it passed the Senate with no dissenting votes, not one. That is unbelievable, and there was little to no discussion on it. And I think that that should cause everybody to take pause. I don't care what bill it is. There should be discussion, and there should be
dissent.
Dissent. I mean, we really don't live in a unanimous type of world, and that's always a red flag for me. So this bill is going to move on to the House Education Committee on Monday at 4. And so it's important that we talk about it today. And I have to give you some videos and homework for the weekend. So Wendy, can you give us a little bit of background on what this bill is all about?
Well, I think we're all familiar with the Our Schools Now initiative that was on the ballot in November, and it was defeated. This is basically putting Our Schools Now into law without going through that ballot initiative. Some of the things are very similar. Our Schools Now put a 25% cap on the money that it was going to be raised being used for teacher salaries. This has a similar sort of 25% cap. So what you find is people talk about how we want to pay our teachers more, and then they say, okay, well, we want to increase taxes, we want to put more money into education, but then why would you cap the teacher salaries at 25%? To me, Our Schools Now and this bill are really just about technology. It's putting more tech into the schools, which some people like. But, when I talk to my neighbors, all I hear from, the moms in my neighborhood are, I wish my kid would get their head out of the computer screen.
Right.
So this is kind of going contrary to what I hear from the people. So it's another case of people who, the legislature in this case, who are pretty sure that they know better than the individual parents who are funding our education system. So
yeah, I think that is a valid point, and there's so many instances in the legislative session where it feels like it doesn't matter what the will of the people is. But speaking of wills aligning, I find it interesting. Right now, the teachers union, the UEA, has taken a position of opposition to this bill. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't. And in this case, I completely agree with every single point that the teachers union has laid out. And so I just wanted to go through them really quick because mm-hmm. they are very concise. They've done a great job. And so their first point is that this bill is redundant. SB 149 is redundant. It just creates another public education funding mechanism. We already have one in place. There's no need for it.
We have 41 funding mechanisms for public education. So what that means is if you have a funding mechanism over here, you cannot use that funding over here, even if your greatest need is over here. So right. As a local school board member, the more funding mechanisms we have, the harder it is to identify where the money is coming from and how you can use it. So in Alpine School District, we need to build buildings and we need to pay teachers. This is not going to do either one of those things.
Right. And that's really important to note. The other thing they say is that it's overly prescriptive.
It is.
Yeah. And it's interesting because just like the federal ESSA grant, which claims to give states all this control and push back local control, this Teacher and Student Success Act is claiming the same thing, that it is pushing power back in the hands of the local. How do you say that that's not true? I mean,
well, people think that if you give the principal the ability to direct the school, that's local control. But in a free society where the people govern, the principal is not accountable to me as a taxpayer, right? The principal is accountable to his or her supervisor at the district office, who's accountable to another supervisor at the district office, and all the way on up to the superintendent, who is then supposedly accountable to the board, and then the board is accountable to the people.
Right. That's a lot of layers.
It's a lot of layers. The local accountability is at the board level, because those are the people that are accountable to the voters.
Right.
And so the greater flexibility that you can give to the board, the greater the ability that they have to customize things that the people want. Additionally, you do have to recognize that the principal being accountable to the district is going to do what the district administration sets out. So, for example, right now, one of the big things is coaching staff. We want to coach our teachers. Well, some teachers like it, some teachers don't, but a lot of the parents would rather have smaller class sizes. So I'm throwing that out. As a board member, I would be more inclined to create a scenario where we have smaller class sizes than use money for coaching. But this is not going to allow a board member to do that.
Or use money to provide a classical approach to math instead of a common core approach to math. I mean, we can go on all day about that, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that brings up another issue that is a huge problem for me with this bill. In order to receive ongoing funding, you have to have a 1% increase in your state test scores every year.
Right. And that's a point the UEA brings up also, is that it relies inappropriately on the test scores.
Right. Well, and those test scores, for those of us who like traditional math, expect our kids to learn the times tables, those tests do not test how well you understand math. They test how well you were trained on taking the test about stuff that sort of is related to math, and can you explain it in English? But, you know, for all of the people, and I know Common Core is still a bad word, and people think that we've gotten rid of it.
Nope.
The ACT Aspire was written by ACT as a Common Core testing mechanism. So even if we had a scenario where we could teach our kids traditional math, this testing is going to make them answer with the 15 different methods to show how you multiply two-digit numbers.
Right.
That parents complain about.
It's so frustrating.
Well,
yes. And the one of the most frustrating parts about the test is you can't even explain to people, because we're under these gag orders, the terrible, I mean, how terrible the test questions actually are.
Right. Because people think that it's a math test, right? And so you're actually asking kids what 3 times 4 is. And so if you say your kid is proficient in 3rd grade math, they're going to be able to tell you that's 12. Right. And the reality is, no, they're just going to be able to drag and drop stars into the appropriate places. Well, that's not.
I know. It's,
you know.
We could go on. We need to do another one of these just about the test and just about math. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm making a docket. I want to start putting these videos out regularly. So, okay. So here's another point by the UEA, that this creates additional bureaucracy.
Absolutely.
So can you explain a little bit about that? And I'd really love it if we could relate that to what the federal government does to the states.
Okay, so every time there's accountability, which I had a friend say, all Republicans pass anything that has the word accountability in it. So this is accountability, so it's all good. So accountability just means
accountability to the people is where it's supposed to go.
Where it's supposed to be, which I should be able to say, I want my kid to go to this school and I want him to learn this. But no, what it means is the principal has to now, because principals don't have anything better to do, put together another plan that's going to be multiple pages, multiple layers. He or she may have to convene the school community council, a parent group. They don't have to, but they may. Teachers, get them all together. Let's put together some plan. Then it has to get approved by the local board. The local board has to have a framework that they send out to the local school district or schools. So in the case of Alpine, you've got over 80 schools that are going to have a plan that then has to be reviewed by the local board, 7 members of the board going through 80 plus plans to see if they meet the framework. This is all layers of bureaucracy, and then to make sure that they, are improving. Well, the bottom line is just teach my kid how to add and subtract and do math and read and,
And give me the flexibility to move them somewhere. If I don't feel like you're doing the job, let me decide instead of the government.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's so ridiculous. It drives me nuts. Okay.
And also, I mean, I started a charter school almost 20 years ago, probably 15 years ago, in order to get traditional math. Well, almost every charter school that was started with that intent in the Alpine School District has switched over because they don't do well on the tests. So there's absolutely going to be no choice whatsoever
Right.
other than private and homeschool.
Right. Well, and I am the liaison for the charter board, and month after month, charter schools come in because they have been failing on their school grade or on some metric that we're using to prove accountability. And they are completely, like you're saying, I've seen evidence of it as well. They're completely upending their entire curriculum set and having to change the focus of their charter. An example is Dixie Montessori down in St. George. I mean, if you know anything about Montessoris, it's a completely different style.
Oh, yeah.
And parents that choose to send their kids there are looking for this more holistic approach to education. Well,
Absolutely.
they're in turnaround status because of their test scores. And so now they're having to completely change their entire way because of the turnaround experts of educating kids, and the people that chose to go there aren't happy about it.
Yeah.
Charters are supposedly a place to have innovation, but if we're tying everything back to these accountability measures, these student and teacher success acts, we are creating a monolithic system with one way of thought, and there is no room for freedom or choice.
Well, and our system is also skewed as well. UCAS, which is the charter school down at UVU, where the kids get their associate's degree by the time they graduate, right? So on our current accountability system, UCAS is listed as needing improvement in their college readiness category because they don't have AP classes.
Right.
Because the kids are over at UVU
taking
actual college classes, but because they don't fit the criteria that we have set up, again, in this monolithic vision, they're not proficient in being college ready because their kids are going to have associate's degrees. I mean, it's completely, and another example. So Lone Peak, my kids go to Lone Peak. Lone Peak got a D grade a couple of years ago for school grading because they don't have the ability to improve. They have so many kids that are already proficient. They can't improve. Well, you have to be able to improve. So they got a D grade. They have one of the highest AP pass rates in the state. So why did they get a D grade? Because again, we're looking at this. This isn't local control.
Right.
I could go on, Right.
Well, people are going to get bored, and we're trying to keep this short. So the last point the UEA made, and I completely wholeheartedly agree, is SB 149 is unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's unnecessary, and we just need to kill it. So go to the House Education Committee at 4:00 on Monday. It's always best if you can show up in person, but I understand we all have lives. So if you can't, call, write, text. I will post the representatives that are on the committee, but really your message needs to go to the entire House. And if a member of the Education Committee tells you you're not their constituent, I would push back, because not all of us have a constituent or a legislator on the committees. And so those
that's the purpose of a committee.
They represent all of us. So don't let someone give you a hard time because you're not their constituent.
Absolutely.
Anyways, so thank you. And hopefully you can watch this, and we'll talk later.
All right.